So hi everyone, this is Ifat with G Plus Decoded, and today we're interviewing Mike Elgan, blogger, techie, and the man himself. Brock is actually representing us in San Diego, so he can't be here today, but I'm sure it'll be fun regardless. So if you're watching this, please +1, so just so we'll know how many people are watching. It's the only way for us to keep track. And let's start. Mike, hi, how are you?
Very well, thanks. And I'd also like to ask everyone to share it like a maniac, because people can watch this. A lot of people don't realize that they can watch these live. The people they share it with can watch them live as well. So let's get the virus spreading.
Yes, thank you. And if you're joining us on the Hangout, please mute your mic so he doesn't, we don't hear the background. And Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. How you grew up, your education, what led you to where you are today?
Okay, I grew up in mostly Southern California, in Santa Barbara, California, mostly, and you know, just grew up surfing and skateboarding and basically wasting my youth. Went to school in the UC system, kept moving, went to UCSB, then I went to UCLA, graduated from UCLA. Majored in political science and Japanese language and culture, that sort of thing. That was back in the 80s when Japan was going to take over the world, and everybody was as interested in Japan then as people are with China now. And I've always had a fascination with Japan anyway, so that was pretty awesome. And while I was at school, I thought I wanted to work for the State Department. And the reason was because I figured, you know, the State Department is going to be awesome. You're going to have all these brilliant people, and I get to work with all these brilliant people every day, and you know, go to exotic locations and all that kind of stuff. And then when I got out, I got sucked into journalism. Started working in newspapers in the Santa Barbara area. My mother was a journalist, and she had some connections, and she hooked me up with a interview, and I got a job at, you know, doing like local politics and stuff like that. And it was pretty cool, but the coolest thing about my job, I started out as a, you know, started out at the very bottom, which in newspaper industry is writing obituaries, which is actually a very wisdom-inducing and yet depressing activity, because you see, you get to talk about people's whole lives and what they wanted to do with their lives and all that stuff, and now they're dead, and it really, you know, it really makes you think when you're in your early 20s. But that was awesome, and then in a couple of years, I became an editor, a managing editor type person, and I was right there when we converted from the old school. Like, we used to print out, use printers. That was our idea of high tech. This is like, we're talking 87. And the production department would actually take razor blades and cut the strips out of the printer and literally paste it with paste on this big board, and it would essentially be photographed. Wow. And that's how newspapers were made. And then I was there and was actually pretty involved in the process of converting over to a totally Macintosh-based editing and production system. And by the time we got done with that whole process, I realized that the thing that I loved my job, but the thing I loved the most was the computers, and didn't really give a rat's behind about local water politics. So I said, you know, hey, they have computer magazines. I can do this. I can really like obsess over computers full time. So I got a job with a little publication, and this is going to make my fellow old-timers laugh, but it was called OS2 and Windows Magazine. And that was, well, actually the first issue before I got there was called OS2 Magazine. Then they changed it to OS2 and Windows. The third issue was called Windows and OS2. And the fourth issue was called Windows Magazine. This is how quickly things were changing in the PC space back then. So we were acquired by a publishing company in New York called CMP, and it was a family-owned business publications. You know, they do a lot of electronics, a lot of health, stuff like that. And we were a unique creature because we were a consumer magazine in an era, now we're talking the early 90s, when computer magazines had a brief heyday. There was a period of time when everybody was getting computers, but the internet wasn't there yet. So there was this brief period of time where people got all the information, and this is hard for the whippersnappers to even understand that this could exist. But you had to get all your information from a print magazine, and so print magazines where all the advertising was and all this stuff. So anyway, I was the editor of Windows Magazine for pretty much the 90s, and then left that to come to Silicon Valley to do a startup that was essentially content-based, and that was right before the crash. So I started with a startup. I worked there maybe 8 months or something like that, and then the whole frickin' thing went south. This was in like 2000, and the valley was just like deserted overnight. It was a horrible bloodbath that was probably even more extreme than this more recent recession. And so I ended up doing miscellaneous consulting. I edited another publication, and then probably around 2004 or so, I stumbled into my current and lifelong passion of writing opinion columns full-time for primarily online publications. So that's how I got to where I am. It's a long and sad story, but I ended up right where I always wanted to be, which is writing opinion columns and blogs.
So it's kind of interesting because you started with political science, and you moved into journalism, and you kind of like, so your passion is writing, right?
Well, yes. My passion, see, I always had this feeling my whole life that what I would do for a living wasn't invented yet. And so I didn't take anything seriously. That's my excuse. That's what I told my parents. This is why I'm not taking anything seriously. But, you know, I just knew that I would be into something that didn't exist. And so I kind of just like study the stuff that I was interested in without really seeing it as a job thing. So my passion has always been human culture, and even today I pretend to write about technology, but I actually write about human culture. And technology is really just the tools that humans have invented in order to live differently. That's all technology is. So I really focus. When I was at Windows Magazine, we were all speeds and feeds and all that kind of stuff, and I abandoned that as quickly as I could because it's really, what really matters to me is how it changes our lives and how us as human beings affect technology and culture and what the blowback effects are and all that stuff. So really my fascination is human beings and human culture.
And how did you discover that, and actually how did you find a niche where you can explore that and actually make money from it? Because what you do really is basically you find stuff that interests you.
Yeah.
And you talk about it.
I mean, it was a long discovery process, and I wish I could have discovered it sooner. But when I was editing the Windows Magazine, I was able to do all kinds of different things. I wrote the magazines. For those of you too young to know what magazines are blogs made out of trees. And in the beginning, there's usually an opinion column by the editor, and so I wrote that. So it was like an opinion column. And then I would occasionally write features. I would occasionally write tips and tricks type stuff, how-to columns, all that kind of stuff. And so I did all that stuff, and the stuff that really gratified me was the analysis and opinion part of it, where because it's really a kind of philosophy in a way. And what I mean by that is what philosophers do is philosophers don't do science. They take the products of science. They take the knowledge that scientists get through experimentation and observation, and they take other factors, and then they think everything through and then come up with some conclusions. And that's kind of what an opinion columnist does. Everybody's chattering and talking, and companies are doing things, and everybody's doing all this stuff, and it's worthwhile to have somebody sort of think about where is this going and what does it mean, and that's what I've always enjoyed doing. And I'm like terrible at self-promotion in terms of, I'm good at self-promotion in terms of talking about myself online, but I'm terrible at career management. I've never actually sought out a job, and everything that I do is people ask me to write for them or whatever. And if I was better at it, I would go out and be hitting the streets and trying to get really great writing assignments and all that stuff. And I've never Never been interested in doing that. And which is fortunate because we live in an age now where it almost doesn't matter where you publish anymore. Everything is a link away. And so I could write stuff in Cat Fancy magazine and I would have the same audience exactly. It would all, come from online and from search and from my blogging and all that kind of stuff. So, it's a lot of fun, and it's just, I mostly just lucky. The truth is, I happen to have a personality that's really compatible with what I do.
That's, I always say that it's better to have more luck than brain. And you obviously don't miss, you don't lack in the brain side, so you have a lot of luck. It's great.
Well, I lean very heavily on luck, I can assure you.
Me too. So what is a day in the life of Mike Elgan like?
I get up really early. I get up at 4, and I read for a couple of hours. And then I basically get on Google Plus, and I don't get off until in the evening, pretty much. And I'm just I sort of blog, I kind of read, I go through my stuff, but it's mostly just learning. I'm just learning all the time. I'm always cultivating lists of content and sources of content, and I just go through that. I have this big long list, and I go through it every single day, and I'm just hunting all the time for stuff. And I'm looking for things to write about. I'm looking for things to think about. I'm looking for people to follow. I'm looking for resources. So I'm just always in this kind of hunting mode. And what's funny is that I do all of my actual work between the hours of 9 p.m. and midnight. So 3 times a week when I have an actual deadline, I don't even start thinking about it till after dinner, and then I'm like, okay, I got to write something. But the beautiful thing is that I've been hoarding all these ideas all week. Some of them I post, some of them I don't, and then so I always have lots of things that I just have been sort of in the back of my mind, and so I can usually write a column. I kind of just think intuitively, what is bugging me? What is not right? What are people talking about and they're missing something, or where is the conventional wisdom going in the wrong direction, and how can I insert myself into that conversation and try to get it going in the right direction? So that's pretty much what I do. It's I work from home, and of course my daily routine is different when I go to a conference or travel or whatever, but that's pretty much the average.
Okay, so you're kind of like a modern day philosopher.
In a way, I like to think of myself that way because I also write about food and health, and I do the same thing with that, which is really interesting because my wife and I work on health-related stuff, and we have very different roles. She really knows a lot about nutrition and cooking and all that stuff. I don't know much about any of that stuff, but I like to think about the cultural aspects of food and health. And together we sort of work really well.
So as an entrepreneur, what would you tell anyone who's considering entrepreneurship today? Any words of advice for them?
Well, first and foremost, that entrepreneurship is probably almost always a great idea. My wife works for a giant company who will go unnamed, but its initials are AT&T. And it's a big company. I don't know. Everybody should know that Dilbert, the cartoon, was inspired by Scott Adams, I think is his name, when he worked at AT&T. So that's basically, if you think of Dilbert, that's where my wife works. And she spent most of her career working with startups in Silicon Valley, and some people that she'd worked with got acquired by AT&T, and so she ended up at AT&T. So she's been, one of her areas of speciality is she'll take a people with an idea who get some funding, and she'll take that funding and make a company out of it. And so she's been at the very beginnings where she was employee number 2, and she's worked at AT&T. And I see what her life is like in those extremes. on the one hand, right now at AT&T, she has a great salary, she has great benefits, she has a very comfortable, safe working environment. She's it's all these things that people seek. She got really great job security. And I've seen her when she's been in startups where it's like maybe the company won't exist in 2 months. There's hardly any money. They live in these cramped things, but that's where the happiness is, because she's every bit of her energy is put into building something and making something. Whereas when you work in a big company, almost all your energy is covering your butt, trying to figure out how you can, get. It's not. You think back on your life. You're going to want to think back about what risks you took and what you were able to build and how you were able to contribute in a meaningful way to other people. So I think that's entrepreneurship is really what that's all about. It's not about making a lot of money. For most people, it's about building something and contributing something to society, and hopefully, being rewarded by society with a thriving business.
So what do you think the most essential skill an entrepreneur needs to have in order to be successful today?
Courage. I mean, we have the rate of change accelerates all the time. So things are changing faster and faster all the time, and so lots of things are going to be different in 5 years than they are now, and 10 years are going to be even more different than they were 5 years from now. So it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there and try something new. And you have to remember that the things that are a big deal today were a little deal before. They didn't seem like a business. And I've gone through this personally. I never thought that I could make a living as a opinion columnist. There was nothing stopping me except that idea that I couldn't do it. Turns out I could have all along, and I should have done it earlier. But if you think about things like Google, this is an extreme example. Google was a 2-bit, third-rate, student project sitting on a couple of inexpensive, computers bought on eBay and found as scrap on on Stanford campus. And now it's one of the most important companies in the world, and you just can't imagine, everything that's huge starts out as tiny. And so if you've got an idea that seems like, well, there's no business there, there's no future for it and stuff like that, if you can find a way to make it financially, whether it's with another job or with the original job, you can't, don't always stop yourself by thinking, well, there's no market for this, because there's a market for everything. And because we live in a globalized world, you don't have to, there used to be, let's say I want to sell something, I want to have a store, so I'm going to sell something, right? So, I like food, so I'm going to sell some food. Well, in order to make it in my neighborhood, in my town, I have to be a really good store, and I have to satisfy everybody. I got to have a whole grocery store with all kinds of stuff. Otherwise, I'll never have any customers. But with a globalized market, and you have a store, you could sell the most obscure thing. You could sell, chocolate-covered, hot dogs or something like that, and you can find a market for that globally. There's enough people in the whole world to actually make a go of something. That's a terrible idea, but I mean, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like something. Don't be stopped because it's something small. If you believe in something and you love something, chances are there's other people who are going to love that and want that as well. So it's like you really have to have a lot of guts you have to take leaps of faith, I think. And every successful entrepreneur that I know has done that.
So for you, Mike, what is the most crucial? What's the most influential time or moment or person in your life that led you to where you are today?
I think that I think the most influential person is definitely Fred Langa, who was the editor-in-chief. He was my boss at Windows Magazine. He was the editor-in-chief of Byte magazine back in the 80s. And that was a big magazine, and we were a little magazine. And over time, we became a big magazine, and Byte was a much smaller magazine. But he really mentored me and taught me, how to run a magazine, he taught me a lot about communication, a lot about technology, a lot about everything. So it'd have to be Fred Langa. And I think and this is very germane to entrepreneurship. I know most of what I know because I worked at a small organization that became large. So when we launched Windows Magazine, there was 7 employees. That was the startup staff. I was one of 7 employees. And we put out 100 editorial pages or something like that in 3 weeks with 7 people using SneakerNet. We didn't even have a network up and running. And so with 7 people on an editorial staff, I was personally doing a gazillion jobs. I was writing, I was editing, I was copy editing, I was doing production, I was helping with design, I was doing all those things. And that's really where you get really good at stuff, is when you work at a really tiny organization. That's why so many of these people in Silicon Valley are so brilliant at what they do, because when you start out and there's 2 guys or two women or 2 people in a company doing everything, usually at the smallest typical scenario for a startup is 2 people. So you have the Steve Jobs and you have the Steve Wozniak. You have the technical genius and you have the marketing person. And both are technical, both are marketing, but you kind of specialize, and those 2 people are doing all the pieces of marketing and all that stuff that a big company would do. And then when their company, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, these 2 guys they were there when there was just 2 of them. They were there when there's 5 of them. Mm-hmm. When there's 5 people and you're one of 5 people, you're doing 20% theoretically.
Right.
And so that's why, have you ever noticed that these greatest companies are always run by the visionary founders? Apple, Microsoft was a much greater company when Bill Gates ran it. Facebook, Google, and so on. It's like visionary founders were there at the beginning, and so it's as if they've done the work that is currently being done by 1,000 people or something like that. So that's another great reason to get into entrepreneurship, because it really teaches you stuff. If you come out of school, like I know this guy who, brilliant engineering student, he graduated from IIT in India, went straight to Apple, right? And he just was inserted as a cog in the machine. Mm-hmm. He has no idea how anything really works. He knows how his little piece works. But if he had gone and founded a company and then grew it into an Apple, he would know everything about how everything works. And that's really an important thing that's an important reason for somebody to try entrepreneurship as early in their career as possible.
Because the mistakes are not that fatal, right? And you're not as afraid.
and you really understand things. I mean, like I really understand. Like I could publish a magazine. I could do any job in a magazine, print magazine, absolutely any job, because I have done every job there is. And you can't do that if if you go in to a big organization, you end up doing one little job.
Right. You're kind of like the screw that makes the machine work.
Yeah.
You said you're reading a lot of books. What's your favorite book, business or marketing?
I think that I have an obsession with classics in general, for books in general. But I think the best marketing book that I've read this is a completely unoriginal thing, but the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Rees and Trout. This is a very fundamental book. It's been around for a while, and it's fantastic. But I think better advice that I can give people is, I don't know how many people have read Guy Kawasaki's book, mm-hmm. but it's called Enchantment, and it's a very enchanting book. But everybody should read it. But more importantly, whenever you do, the biggest problem with people who are into reading marketing books is that they work in a situation where other people aren't reading those books. And so if you're by yourself and you are trying to implement great ideas from great marketing books, good luck. because it takes a village. And so I really strongly recommend that if anybody is in an organization with, 5, 10 people, or in a department where there's, a reasonable number of people, give everybody Guy Kawasaki's book. Because you want everybody singing from the same hymn book, and that's a great book because it really covers a lot of old ground. He doesn't ignore good ideas because they're old and been out there and published. He credits everybody, but he brings together the best ideas for marketing into a book that's very readable. And if I had 5 employees, I would give each and every one of them that book. So I think that's a better tip than which book should you read, is which book should you have the people you work with read, including like engineers and people who have nothing to do with marketing, especially people who have nothing to do with marketing.
A friend of mine does it for his company. He actually pays his employees $100 if they read good to great, because he wants everybody to be on the same page.
Yeah.
So that's a great idea. Yeah. Talking about ideas and advice, what's the worst business advice you've ever got?
Worst business advice. I think that I was encouraged very early to stay in newspaper journalism, and that was a terrible idea. Not only because print journalism is really hard business, but I just don't have the right personality for print newspaper journalism, and so that was terrible advice on somebody's part. You know who you are out there.
What's the difference between print and what you do now? Why do you think you're not very good for that?
Well, I think I'm fine with print, but unless you're at certain types of, like I think I could find a niche at a big newspaper, like Wall Street Journal or something like that. But 99% of the newspapers in this world are small town and local state type newspapers, and they cover boring crap. They cover stuff that I'm really not interested in. State and local politics is really, somebody wants to build something, people don't want it because there's too much traffic, and then it's like the same conversation over and over. And those conversations need to be had, and I respect people who do have the right kind of mindset for that kind of thing. Journalists are great people. I love journalists, but I just am way too squirrely for that kind of thing. I'm just way too ADD to go to planning commission meetings. Can't do it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I think, Mike, that you and us, we share the same view of Google+. You call it a social layer. We call it a social platform.
Yeah.
And we kind of like saying the same thing. And there's a quote of yours that I really like. So I'm going to read that. You were saying about Google+ back 7 months ago. Mm-hmm. You were saying, instead of saying I'm going to write a post or I'm going to send an email, you said if you address it to public, it's a blog post. If you address it to your circles, it's a tweet. If you address it to your customer circle, it's a business newsletter. And if you address it to a single person, it can be a letter to your mother. And you said it's very revolutionary. And you said it 7 months ago, but still the community doesn't seem to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, this gets to the core of everything that is interesting about technology, which is that it's really easy to change technology. It's really hard to change people. And if you look at the most successful companies, I'm going to grab 3 examples, 2 from technology and 1 from outside technology. And those examples are Apple, Google, and Starbucks. All 3 of those companies are primarily in the business of changing human behavior at scale. So one of my favorite examples is Starbucks. Starbucks didn't invent coffee. They didn't invent the concept of selling coffee in a coffee shop. They didn't invent anything. What they invented was the idea that instead of making coffee at home using Folgers from a can, which everybody used to do, 99% of the coffee in this country was drunk at home or at work using some kind of filter system. And if you went to a coffee shop or you went somewhere, it was cheap, really cheap. Coffee used to be like 50 cents or 25 cents or something like that. And Starbucks managed to get the whole world driving out of their way, parking, standing in line for 10 minutes in the morning paying $4 for a type of coffee that they didn't use, adding things to the coffee that they didn't used to add, then drinking it in the car out of a paper cup with a plastic thing on it. It's not about coffee. It's about they got us to change our habits, and that's the ultimate thing to do. And Google is the same way with privacy. Google gives us these amazing things, but if we want to use Latitude, we have to let Google know where we are. And if we want to use Gmail, we have to let Google's computers read our email. And we kind of like stop for thinking, wow, they're reading my personal email to give me advertising? All right. And then so now they've changed me. They've changed my expectations about things. Apple's really great with that. When they came out with the iPhone, I always talk about this example. They came out with the iPhone, and people were like, wow, and a whole screen, no buttons. Come on, it's terrible. I can't use this on-screen keyboard. Pretty soon somebody will make a physical keyboard or something like that. And Apple didn't let anybody do it. They didn't make one. They didn't let anybody else make one. There was no option for like 2 years for the iPhone except using the on-screen keyboard. Guess what? Everybody stopped complaining about it. We got used to it, and now people are fine with on-screen keyboards. They changed us. Wow. And Google Plus is, Google's in the same position with Google Plus. People come to, the biggest reason people don't really use Google Plus is they come and they think it's Facebook. And they're like, well, my high school friends aren't here, and my best friend isn't here, and my parents aren't here, and I really don't have anybody to talk to, and I want to talk, and that's Facebook, right? Eventually Google Plus will be a great place to talk to all your relatives. I think a lot of people will be on it in the future. But people don't change very easily, and they don't want to, they don't have a reason to. The world is exists in your mind, and it's very difficult for you to enter into a new world and to engage in new behaviors. And so it really, I think what we're doing right now, this is the biggest selling point to people, which is Hangouts. Hangouts is the feature of Google Plus that everybody gets right away, because it's not a fundamentally different behavior from video chatting, but it's just great because you have all these people, and it's free and easy and unlimited, and you can have Hangouts that go on forever, and it's just click away, and people get Hangouts right away. It doesn't really require a huge change, and it's a small leap to just get into a Hangout and you get it right away, and there's nothing difficult about it. Using Google Plus, like when you're posting things, it's like, well, who's getting this? It feels like nobody's reading it. For most new people, they're not making the leap. And I'm always going on and on and on about Google Plus, and so my immediate family members have kind of been infected by it, and they've been jumping in and really getting a lot out of it. But it really takes you have to have a motivation for for the average person. It's like, with nothing to sell, or nothing to promote, and why? I've got Twitter, I've got Facebook. Why do I need Google Plus? And that's why I think that the best reason is that Google Plus is not that great actually as an addition to all your other things if you're already overworked. If I'm already up to here with social networking, adding Google Plus is time consuming, because it's great. There's all this comments are fantastic, and you want to interact with people, and then you look at the clock and, oh my God, 5 hours have gone by, and I've been sucked into this thing. And so you really got to give up something else. You have to give up, maybe not Facebook, because you're really giving up, mom, dad, and everybody else, but at least give up Twitter. Come on. I mean, Twitter is just a really sucky version of Google Plus that doesn't do anything other than give you this little line, and you can just automatically have your stuff go to Twitter anyway. So I really think people ought to give up some of their social networking to when they, if you really want to get the most out of Google Plus.
And actually, the one thing that you said right now, Hangouts, and Google TV, right now we're having our own channels, basically bringing YouTube to the living room.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to change, the media out there, the TV station, cable, everything?
Oh, I don't know if it'll change it or replace it, or I don't. There's, Google TV and Apple TV Hangouts are absolutely going to come to TV sets. I mean, this is what if you've studied the Jetsons very carefully, you notice that their video conferencing is always on a TV, and it's not a little, and that's really the future people want. People want to do this on big screen TVs naturally. It's not a big computer thing with a camera and set it up. No, it's just channel, and just a simple thing. I'm pretty sure that in March, Apple is going to. I'm not pretty sure. I think there's a really good chance that Apple's going to announce some Apple TV stuff that involves FaceTime on your TV. The Google TV, I think, is going to be huge with FaceTime. I'd love to see FaceTime going on at the same time as a TV show. So the best way to make TV social is to have. Imagine if, we were all here, and then on the big picture was the Super Bowl.
Watching it together.
That'd be a cool way to watch the Super Bowl, and I think it's just a no-brainer that this Hangout type video conferencing or whatever is coming to televisions. It's absolutely going to happen.
It'll be very interesting. Last question for me, and then we're going to take some questions from people who are watching here. Your last entry on MikeElgan.com was 7 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said there, like, the first thing that you see is that I moved to Google+. Mm-hmm. Is this the only place you interact? You just dropped everything else and you interact only on Google+? Yeah.
It was an experiment initially because what happened was, Google Plus first came out. Where was I? I was out of town or something. It was a rare moment when I actually did something where I unplugged for a couple of days, and I came back, and everybody's talking about Google Plus, and I'm like, what is this thing? And I'd been obsessing over Google social networking ineptitude. I mean, I'd just been ripping them for all the social things they've done, starting with Orchid. I've been criticizing Orchid for years, and they had been saying all the right stuff. There was a PowerPoint presentation that some Googler made about circles and all this kind of stuff, and it just was driving me crazy because they were saying one thing, and there are people talking internally about other things. But if you recall, like a year ago, the conventional wisdom was that Google was going to add social to everything. So they're going to make Gmail social, and they weren't going to have a social network. They were just going to have, social things sprinkled everywhere. A little social in Google Reader, a little social in Google Docs, a little social. And I wrote some pretty harsh things about that strategy and said, you don't understand what Mark Zuckerberg understands, which is that a social network is a party. You don't want, a party is a place where you go temporarily. You go there, you're with other people, you have a great time, you have some great conversations, you have some fun, and then you leave, and then you don't have a party. You don't want the attributes of a party in your everyday life. To extend the metaphor, you don't want drunk people on your table when you're having breakfast. You don't want loud music when you're trying to work. You don't want the pieces of a party all the time. You want a place to go when you want to be in party mode. Anyway, I wrote about all this stuff, and when they launched Google Plus, I'm like, oh my God, this is all the stuff that they had been saying should be done, and they finally did it. So I looked into it, I really explored it, and I started having epiphanies about how flexible it was. This thing that you read earlier about how it can be this, it's a tweet, it's a blog post, it's a letter, it's all these things. And I realized, what do you need anything else? What do you need any other social network for? Especially since you can communicate, and this is a horribly underutilized feature, that you can send your post to people by email. They don't have to be on Google Plus to get it. That was the most impressive thing to me about Google Plus, was that you could, you could have entire circles made up of people who never even heard of it, and they would get your posts. It's like, why doesn't everybody use that like crazy? That's a really great feature. And so I wrote this whole column about, like, you can only use Google Plus and you don't need any other thing. And then after I submitted, I thought, everybody's going to say, well, if that's so great, why don't you do that? If you're, sure, it's easy to say, but why don't you do it? And I thought, well, why don't I do it? I'll do it for 3 weeks. I'll do it for 4 weeks. So I sent my editor a note and said, can you add this little paragraph at the end saying, and therefore I'm going on the Google Plus diet, and I'm just gonna use only Google Plus, and that's it. And wow, it was great. It was a revelation to do that. I thought it was going to be temporary, and the thing that made Google Plus great was not using everything else. You know what I mean? That's what made it great. It wasn't this chore that I had to go to 2 hours a day and try to figure out and all this stuff. It was like, okay, this is where I live. In the beginning, I was sending all my email from Google Plus posts. I would copy the email address and put them in a circle. I built this like whole address book, and I was getting a lot more conversation and interaction and social networking done in a lot less time, because I wasn't going from here to there to there and there. It was all just like happening in one place. I had one stream. The things that I did when I post to Twitter, there's a link on Twitter that goes back to Google Plus for comments. So it wasn't like there's conversation on Twitter that I had to go find. It was all on Google Plus. It was fantastic. And so it took me about 4 or 5 weeks to realize I'm not gonna blog. It's like blog is hard to give up because it's customized. The look and feel of it. It's like my branding, and I have my logo, and I have a design. It's my colors, and all that stuff, and it has archiving, and I can have the dates, and that's hard to walk away from because you think, well, that's my identity. That's my personal identity, and it's really important. But what I realized is that what's really important? People. People are really important. It took me 4 years to acquire 18,000 followers on Twitter. And I'm getting about 18,000 more followers every 3 or 4 days now. It's really great to have so many great people. And the audience is far more important than anything else. Nothing else matters except being able to reach people. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And again, the secret to building that is give up everything else and pour all your energy. We did this the hangout a couple days ago, and I was making the point that I used the example, the model, is if you can imagine there are 10 social networks, and you spend equal time on each. 10% of your time on Facebook, 10% on Twitter, 10% on LinkedIn, 10% on blah, blah, blah. Each of the people on those networks think you're only 10% of the person you really are.
Right.
And you seem like a small person who doesn't have much to say. Meanwhile, you're killing yourself trying to keep up with all these networks. If you can do it all in one place, then that audience sees you for 100% of what you are, and they think, wow, this person is so prolific, they're so engaging. And it's like, people think that about me, but I'm not. I'm actually posting less than I ever have in terms of posts. I'm probably having more conversations because the conversations are better now because Google Plus is great for conversations. But at the end of the day, for the first time, I'm one person instead of a scattered. I'm like everything that I think about and write about and post about is all in one place, and whoever's following me sees the real me, not just a piece of me. And so that's why I have a lot of followers, because I'm not part-time. It's full-time on Google Plus. Right now, I think anybody who does that full-time and really explores their interests and stuff like that can really get a lot. There's a curve like this. It takes a while, and then once you start getting on shared circle lists, you can really gain a lot of friends, circle friends.
I love this because it's really what we're saying. Google Plus is about engagement and not just about like marketing and me, and it's the people. It's beautiful. So I'm going to open it up. I think Chris Long had a few questions. Chris, you want to unmute?
We can't hear you, Chris.
Sure. Hi, Mike.
There we go.
I wanted to see what kind of advice you could give new writers. Okay. She had me muted there. Okay, quick question for new writers.
Yeah.
Way back when, I learned the tell them what you're going to tell them scenario, and a couple other people helped me. I read the Hemingway story, the baby shoes thing. I wondered if you could give us writers some advice, new writers, some advice on how to get the story told quickly, more eloquently, and in less time, and help our readers to get it more quickly, maybe.
Okay. My advice for writers is the same advice I give for public speakers, which is that there's a kind of diversion that people have. They think that writing is a skill and public speaking is a skill, and you need to learn the subcomponents of that skill and master the skill. And that's fine. There's form and there's substance. And I think that people focus way too much on the form and not enough on the substance. My advice, for example, it's easier to do with public speaking. If you want to be a great public speaker, the only advice you need is to have something to say that you really care about. If you're talking about something you don't really care about, then all the PowerPoint skill and advice about when to tell a joke and all that stuff is not going to make the audience stay awake. And the same thing goes for writing. I think there's way too much emphasis on the form and not enough on the substance of it. So there's a quote by Einstein that something along the lines of you can't explain something clearly unless you really understand it. I'm munging it. It's something like that. But the idea of making something sound simple is to really understand it. And so that's a good starting point. It's about what you write more than how you write it. And I would also, advise people, again, I sound like the biggest cheerleader in the world for Google+, but Google+ is the greatest writing tool ever, because you put something up there and then people criticize, or you notice that it doesn't get a lot of attention, nobody's sharing it, nobody's +1ing it, and so you can tweak it and you can try again next time. And it's really you get kind of immediate feedback about how things resonate with people. And so, I would advise, concise language is a great idea. Colloquial language is a really great idea. And sometimes those things aren't, you can't, there's no formula for writing colloquial speech. If you can come up with a turn of phrase that just feels right, sometimes that's better than all the writing advice in the world. I would also advise people, to never allow themselves to use a cliche. Cliches are the death of good writing, and try not to write anything that sounds like a cliche, even though you coined it. Mixed metaphors are a bad idea. Just kind of try to strip down what you're trying to say into the plainest, most unadorned language you possibly can, and still convey the truth of what you're trying to say. It's not, avoid formulas, avoid, sort of the kind of advice that's all about structure, and really say what you're trying to say in the plainest possible language. That I think was probably the best advice that I've learned the hard way over the years.
Grace, is that good? Paul, you had a question?
Thank you. Mike, earlier in today's hangout, you talked about the whole thing about having an idea and bringing it and sharing it with the world when you were talking about entrepreneurship. And then in the earlier this week, the hangout, you were talking about something that really resonated with me strongly, this idea that publishing today is more, the old rules are kind of gone, and that today it's more about having a platform. And that's been something that's gotten me really excited about. I have this idea for a book that I'm really excited about, and I've had this sense that I don't have to worry about getting someone's okay to get that idea out to the world. But I'm still really kind of overwhelmed, I guess, by all the potential ways to develop a platform that really helps me do that. And I was wondering if you had any advice about how to kind of efficiently start on a path to developing. I know there's no definite one answer, but
well, first of all, a book itself is a great platform. There's a chicken and egg thing there, where if you were trying to sell a book, you need a platform, and a book is the greatest platform because so and so, the author of blah blah blah. That's a great platform, no matter what. But I tend to think that one of the ways that book publishing is changing, and I think it's an underappreciated change, is that it used to be like, I'm going to publish the great American novel. I'm going to publish a book. And I think that people need to start thinking of books as kind of like magazine articles. I would recommend to authors, book authors, that you think about writing books constantly and indefinitely. Keep cranking them out. If you can write a book every year or two, that's fantastic. And you really kind of have to bootstrap the audience a bit. I mean, your books, you have multiple media, right? So if your books can drive interest in your Google Plus profile, your Google Plus profile can drive interest in your books. Those can get you as a guest on a podcast, which can drive interest in both your books and your thing. So you're trying to build up this thing in all. I think that probably one of the greatest content or media entrepreneurs ever is Leo Laporte. And Leo, if you look at what Leo does, he does netcasts. He calls them netcasts. They're video online streaming podcast type things. But everything he touches promotes Leo and his company, and he's really done a great job of doing that. I would recommend that. It all depends on what your book is about. What is your book about?
It would be like a self-help book. I'm a hypnotist professionally, so it would be it wouldn't be a book about hypnotism, but more trying to apply the principles of those kinds of change work things into helping people get more out of life.
Okay, great. So, the first thing you do is you want to gather together the people who would be interested in that book, and that should be interesting to do. That should be self-evident on how to do that. You talk about some of those things in Google Plus or on your blog or wherever it is that you're going to be your central place. And little by little, you'll gather people who become your fans. And you may have 5 fans, you may have 5,000 fans. My brother writes about self-help and stuff like that. He's got a website and stuff like that. And you want to just start gathering those people and just be the person that people interact with on that topic. And I wouldn't try to like market and sell, but instead just share your interests. And learn from people. Everybody's got. It's always amazes me that you're having a conversation with people, and then these incredible geniuses come out of nowhere, and you're like, holy mackerel, who is this person? And you just never, the serendipity of it. You want to bring together all those people, let them know who you are, let them know what you're, reveal your mind to them just by having conversations, and posting things, and then do your book, and then go work on the next book, work on a second revision to that book, and just it's an iterative process of interacting online and then occasionally popping out a book. The beauty of it nowadays is you can do something very simple, and you can do an Amazon, Kindle book, and that's you don't need that. There aren't any huge design considerations for that. It's like you can do it yourself. And then the next version can be Kindle and iBooks, and then the third version can be print, and so you can scale it up depending on how much time and money you have. But I would just you want to keep all those plates spinning at the same time. You want your online presence, and you want to be actively working on a book. The hardest thing is finishing the damn thing. As I'm sure you are discovering. It's really hard to delay the immediacy for the long term,
Yeah, and it's like, and I'm, primarily my identity is as sort of a hypnotist, but you know, or I guess more, I realize it's about being a small business owner, and so constantly you talk about spinning plates, like for years now, trying to learn about all these things. I mean, my degree is in English. I was an English teacher, and so for years now, looking at social media and things like Ustream and Stick'em, and now here's Google Plus, and there's just always this new thing, and trying to figure out like how many vehicles, gosh, like how many platforms do you need, and how do you find one that people actually care about? And it just seems like now it's all noise. You know, there's just so much noise.
Yeah.
And you get to a point. I get to a point where I'm like, I don't want to be contributing to that noise. I want to, you know, be doing something that's good and useful for others. And so part of me feels like ever since I've come here and joined this community, part of me feels like just almost, especially hearing you today talk about leaving some of that other stuff behind. Part of me feels like just doing it here. You know, just hanging out and being with people here and working it through that way. But.
Well, there are three reasons why that's the way to go. Because the first is that Google Plus is built-in SEO. So everything you post, and you mentioned hypnosis, and you mentioned this, that, and the other thing, and all the subtopics that you're going to talk about, those all get cataloged in Google's index and is available by search, so people can discover you very easily. Make sure you always post publicly. So that, you know, anybody, you don't even need to have heard of Google Plus in order to come and read your stuff. And the second thing is that there are already a few tools that auto-post from Google Plus to other platforms, and those are only going to increase in quantity. I mean, I think that it's just a no-brainer that a year from now, you'll be able to just do a plug-in, or you'll be able to just throw a switch somewhere, and your Google Plus posts will be automatically posted on a WordPress blog or on a Blogger blog, complete with formatting, picture, comments, and everything. Where the comments of people who make comments on Google Plus appear on the blog, and the people who comment on the blog, their comments appear on Google Plus. Already it's easy to go to Twitter. I'm sure it's got to improve to go to Facebook. Facebook is really kind of dicey right now. Because Facebook really resists that kind of stuff. But that's really the way to go. We were talking Tuesday about the hub and spoke model, where you have a central place where you live, and then automated tools send what you write out into the world with links back to where you live, back to the comments area of your blog. And that's the home run, because that you get the best of all worlds. You get to focus on one platform, and you're also everywhere. So that's really the way to go. We still have to wait till more of those tools come out, but they're coming. In the meantime, it's a great idea to just, you know, to really master Google+. I mean, this is a rare opportunity. How many times does Google come out with well, that's a bad example. Google comes out with a new social network every couple of years, but I think this is the last one that they're going to come out with. And you know, how often do they come out with a real winner like this? You know, it's rare. It's really rare. And I tell people this, and I don't think people are getting what I'm saying. Whoever's on the top of the pile now, when the pile is little, is going to be on the top of the pile when the pile is huge. If you look at Twitter, you know, the Scobles and the Steve Rubels and the people who are really gained followers on Twitter when it was young are the people who became giants on Twitter as the tide rose. So, you know, you really want to, now's the time to really be active on Twitter to get, you know, to gain out. Did I say Twitter?
Yes,
oh my God. Yeah. Now is not the time to be active on Twitter. Now is the time to delete your account on Twitter. No, on Google Plus, because it's new. It's still new, even after 6 months or 7, or however long it's been around. You know, you can. I've seen people come in 2 months have, you know, a couple thousand followers, which is amazing. And then it's just all up from there. And it's, you know, it's not, but it's not about just having followers. That's not what's important. What's important is the people who are interested. Like, you're never going to be the exclusive purveyor of the type of information that you have to offer. But you can be the top one. You can be the best one, and you can be the most accessible one, and you can be the most prolific. You know, you can take action to be the #1 guy in a little world that's going to become a big world.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we're right on time. This is perfect. Last questions, anyone, or we're good? We're good. Mike, thank you so much. This is great. This is a wonderful interview.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is it's very flattering, and I really appreciate it. I love your series, and you know, I recommend that everybody who's got a business, who wants to have a business, should be watching every one of these, because these are really, really awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. I'm going to close the broadcast now. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ready to get